we read much into Riley being the pivot again today, or was that another team balance thing that Bill thought?
No, I mean, we just had an 18 on 18, so you can't, obviously we're not going to have 4 blokes sitting on the bench in training. So, no, there's not much in that. We'll go through now and look at the selection. Yeah, I thought he was moving quite well, so it was pleasing. But we had quite a few boys that would have been in different bibs today at different times, but we'll go through the selection after this meeting.
Can get a bit slippery up there. Is there a temptation with Josh available again to go in a bit smaller?
No, not necessarily. We'll have a look at it all when we sit together as a group. But yeah, look, we're pretty keen to get Joshy back in. Obviously, had some really good form early in the season. He's freshened up. He really looks like he's running on top of the ground now as well. So yeah, looking forward to him getting back in the team. But what that means for others, we'll find out a little bit later.
What's the ceiling, do you think, for Josh? Clearly, the toll of playing every game at the start of the year took its toll. Do you think he can sort of get back to that early season form in the back half of the year?
We hope so. I'm not sure. All we do is make sure that we get him right to play as best as we possibly can. And I guess if you're here today watching, he looked quite sharp, looked powerful, looked explosive, looked up and about. It's funny, when footy gets taken away from you when you're a young fella too, you miss 1 or 2 weeks, you're pretty keen to get back out there and play. And he certainly had a fair bit of enthusiasm today at training.
How's Parnell tracking as well? He obviously was someone a little bit unlucky to cop that injury in his first game, and now Brown potentially coming back in for it. How do you think he's played?
Yeah, well, Paddy was pretty good, showed some good signs last game. We still had a little bit sore with the quaddie, but we're really pleased today. He got through training, and it's probably the first time he's really let down in a week and a half, and we've got to be mindful too. We play Sunday, so we've still got 4 days. There's still plenty of time. We'll go through selection after this meeting today, but the final team doesn't need to be made till Friday afternoon anyway, the final 22. So we'll definitely have an extended bench and probably see a little bit more from training Friday before we categorically make decisions on anyone.
Tommy Day looked a little bit banged up and spent some time with no contact. Is he okay?
Yeah, Tommy's good. Yeah, look, Tommy was in terrific form. I reckon the first 8 to 10 weeks, Tommy probably wasn't getting spoken about enough actually with some of the footy he was playing. I think he was leading the intercepts in the league, and been an absolutely fantastic player for us back there on smalls or talls. But yeah, he's copped a few hits over the last few weeks. So the bye just came at a really good time for him. So it was just one of those times where you get 1 week off from a game, and let's either side from a training point of view, let's ease up a little bit as well. So it's really to freshen him up so he hits the last 10 games running.
What's your preference, just going back to Paddy, what's your preference in an ideal world with debutants and guys coming into their first games? Do you like to give them a bit of an extended run in the side rather than 1 game in?
Yeah, I think anyone at any team prefers that. That's ideal, but it's not an ideal world sometimes too. You mean, there may be, you have the good player who might be suspended for a week or out with an injury for a week, and the young fella gets his opportunity, and especially with a team that's playing well, sometimes the blokes are in form, it's hard for them to maintain it. But I think we've been pretty consistent this year, on most occasions, that we want to give guys, that 2, 3, 4 weeks if we can. And then it's really up to that individual whether they really grasp the opportunity and turn that 3 or 4 weeks into 8 to 10 weeks. But it's not an ideal world, AFL football. We've got to make decisions, and we've got to do the best thing for the team and for our team that we pick, but also who we're coming up against. We've got to have a look at that. But yeah, we're a little bit different to the teams that are probably at the top as well. We're making decisions on the future as much as the now. So we'd certainly love to give younger players opportunities for a month of football. Unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't work out like that.
Does Fisher come into the equation then on that point and back up of the season?
Well, hopefully, yeah. You watched obviously training today. Would have been pretty impressed with some of the things he's done. Yeah, look, he's really come on leaps and bounds. I think over this first half of the season, he's gone forward, a bit of a new lease on life. It was excellent today with some of his contests, and had some real power today in some of the handball games we did too, where he really took the tacklers on. So it's really pleasing. We just unfortunately missed though last week, so that's 2 weeks he hasn't played for. So he probably needs just a couple of runs under his belt before we're really confident to take him into an AFL game.
How do you see the balance of the back line with obviously Butsy becoming available again this week, but Murray and Duday got those spots already in terms of
Yeah, the good thing with Tommy can play on smalls and talls. He does it really well. I think some of his best games have actually been on talls, but he can do both. And we've got a few players that can do that. If Dawson plays back, he can play on small, can play on talls. I think Hinge has been fantastic for us as well in that regard. He's he stood Membry for a whole game, and Membry was okay, but only kicked 2 goals. He's a fantastic AFL footballer, but then he's also gone on the smalls there last week against West Coast. So, it's pleasing that we have players who can play on both smalls and talls, and you do need that. You do need that flexibility at times.
With Rochelle back, is it your best forward line you've had out all season, do you think, provided that Phil Thorpe plays, because he is in your best team?
Yeah. I'm not sure. I'll tell you after the game, Theo, whether it's the best team or not. It goes from week to week a little bit, doesn't it, sometimes? Look, we're still, like any developing team, we've obviously got our senior players who are really important to us that we need in each line, defence, mid and forward, to be playing well to help some of those younger fellas out. It's still, quite youthful. At this stage, there's not too many games. Texas played, 200 plus. Underneath that, there's not too many other blokes that have played a great deal of football there. So it's very, very youthful, and they're still learning the caper in a lot of ways as well. So there's certainly some talent there, and we've certainly got talent on our list. It's a matter of, though, for those boys to get those 2, 3, 4 pre-seasons under their belt to maintain consistent football week in, week out. So some of them are still a little bit away off that, and some of them are just starting to take the steps now where they're starting to show that consistency as well.
How much does Phil Thorpe benefit then from an extended run?
Yeah, well, how many games did he play last year? 15, 17 maybe, did he? Yeah, so he had a really good run at it last year. Got him to work on a few things, obviously, when he went back earlier in the year. He's just been unlucky. He's had COVID, he's had niggles, he's had flus, so he's just been a little bit in and out, and I think there was a bye with the SNFL team as well one stage, so he just hasn't quite had that continuity, and he's just starting to get that now. So he's one player that we're looking forward to over the last 10 games. If he can get out on the training track week in, week out and get 10 games under his belt, and you'd certainly hope that they're at AFL level. There's no guarantees with anything though, but that he can really develop and really stand up and play some really consistent football for us.
And do you understand, I suppose our curiosity around Fisher might not be the same as what it is in the club, but it's sort of intriguing that we've sort of seen the young kid thrown in defence, now he's sort of switching forward and back. And is there a way to sort of unlock his potential, do you think? Is there a lever that you guys are going to pull for the back end of the year for him?
Well, I think hopefully today, like watching training, you would have seen signs that you thought that's pretty impressive. So there's things that are working and things that are happening. As a young fella at under 18 level, he played forward and back. He was in between. I think the state football, though, he played back and played very well, but certainly at school and at I think it was Sandringham, he played a little bit forward and played some good games forward as well. So you talk to the recruiters back at that stage, he probably could play both positions and be a bit of a swingman. We're probably trying to work out which is best position for him. I think if you ask Fish, he's loving the opportunity that he's getting at the moment, and if you watch the SANFL games over the next couple of weeks, you'll see how much he competes too, and we're loving that from him. He competes really aggressively, big strong boy, and he's just starting to get his power back, because he's had some pretty significant injuries too that have hampered him over the last 2 years.
So where's he? I know you sort of touched on that, he could be either side, but I mean, you got Phil Thorpe, Walker, Fogarty, McAdam, Rochelle, and then Butts, Duday. Where, in an ideal world, where would you have him?
Oh, whichever best suits him. Like, there's no lock-ins at this stage. So we'll keep coming back to it. We've got some really good senior players. We've got some players that are around that 40 to 50 game mark that you're going, yep, I reckon they're going to be here long term. And then there's still, you're probably in each line, midfield, forward and back, you've probably got 2 spots where there's 4 or 5 boys we're trying to work out who's going to grasp it, who's going to take it. So there's a few players in that position, which there always will be when you have got a younger developing list. We're trying to find out and get the games into the right players, but at the same time, what we're really pleased with is there's a lot of players that are playing SNFL football very, very well at this point in time, and we've lost the last couple of the SNFL, but we've first time in a long time we've been around the top of the ladder, which means that our players underneath are really developing nicely, and they've taken steps to be better players. Now they've just got to try and take that next step, get the opportunity to play AFL, and hopefully we give them the 3 to 4 weeks if they get their first game, and then we can make more decisions. But a lot of this will be on list management too. At the end of the year, we'll come to that and discuss where we're at and what we need.
Probably the boys' favourite trip of favourite road trip of the season, the Gold Coast. But what are the challenges going up there and with the Suns?
Yeah, they've played some really good football. When you look at nearly one of the first teams to grab Freo, weren't they? Probably 4 or 5 weeks ago. They've beaten Carlton, they've beaten Sydney, and then their last 2 weeks have been really strong up in Darwin. So they've basically kept their team together a bit too. There hasn't been too many changes over the last month or so as well. So they've got a really good core group of players that are playing good footy. I just spoke about the 40 to 50 game players that we may have here. They're starting to get players around that 80 game bracket now too. We know how good Anderson and Raul are as picks, and they're really playing some good football in the midfield, and they've got a great leader around them in Tuke Miller. Jared Witts is leading the hit-outs in the competition as well. Shoal's been a great pickup. Casbolt's helped him out a lot. So, even though they're quite youthful, there's not too much difference between them and us in terms of age and experience. Those senior players that they do have are really helping them out at this point in time too. But they've got some excitement, they've got some speed, they've got some young players with a huge amount of talent, and they've put it together. A lot more consistency this year for, what are we, 12, 13 rounds in, and certainly over 4 quarters. So it's going to be a great challenge for us, and I would think that they'd be full of confidence over what they've achieved over the last 6 weeks.
What did the West Coast win after a streak of 5 losses? What did the West Coast win before the bye give to you guys coming out of the bye?
Well, it's always nice to win. Nice to win for the players, coaches, but especially the supporters and members. I thought it was a really pleasing game in the sense we started very well. I thought it was a little bit underrated, our next couple of quarters. I mean, at 3/4 time, I think we were plus 28, inside 50 still. We really controlled the game in the 3rd quarter, but we just didn't capitalise on our opportunities. And then West Coast, fantastic last quarter. So they come out, and I think they'll carry that on probably the last 10 games too. They've like I said, when we played them, it was the first time in a long time they'd only made one or two changes. So they'll get their consistency. But it was pleasing that we got the win. There's little wins along the way as well. I know it can get frustrating when you zip 5, but if you can have a look at those games in isolation, the Brisbane, the St Kilda and Geelong, you're in the games. There was some poor kicking that hurt us against Brisbane and St Kilda. Geelong early, you 0-goal 6, and yet we still find a way halfway through the 3rd quarter to be only a kick down nearly, or 8 points down. And one of the boys was talking the other day that if you put those 3 games together against quality opposition, I think we outscored them by +1 in terms of scoring shots. So there were a lot of things to like. It was just frustrating we didn't finish our work. So we'll make sure we're positive, but we're working hard too, and we're not certainly happy with where we're at. We want to get better. But there were some positives before the West Coast game, but it is pleasing to get the win, to go into the rooms, put your arms around each other and sing the song at the end of the game. That's a good feeling.
Just on Tuke Miller, I know Jacko had a bit of a nightmare against Patrick Cripps a month ago. Most players would, but he tagged him and he had 35 and 2. Do you try and do something similar against a Tuke Miller, or do you sort of now go, attacks our best form of defence?
Well, there's both. Yeah, you can take a player on, but also you need to call them and nullify them at times too. It's not just him. He's a terrific player, but I thought Rao's game last week against North Melbourne was fantastic. Anderson's been in terrific form all year. Like I said, it's that quartet with him. We put Witts in the ruck as well. The 4 of them have been in really good form. Ballard and down back he's equal with Tommy Duday, I think, of intercepts in the AFL at the moment too. They're 3rd in the comp. So they've got a lot of good players. Do we want to focus on one? Yeah, we might have to focus on 1 or 2. Whether we go in with that focus at the start of the game or we keep an eye on it and that happens throughout the game, we'll discuss in match committee and selection.
Just a word on one of your SANFL guys. How far away is Tariq, do you think, from really being a potential guy for back half of the season?
Well, we recruited Tariq as an NGA in our academy, and he was always going to take time. He was quite skinny and obviously young, and so we certainly didn't want to rush him. If you look at his progress from last year to this year, it's been fantastic as well. He's really come on, does some really exciting things. Tariq will be the first one. He's been a little bit up and down with some of his consistency from quarter to quarter, from game to game. So he's got the ability to kick 2 goals in 5 minutes, and it's hard being in that sort of position in that forward line. You can be starved of opportunities, but he's just got to keep working on his consistency. But he's taken massive steps within 12 months, so we're really pleased with how he's going. And if he keeps it up and keeps improving, there may well be an opportunity for him later in the year.
Lockie Gallant's signing on for 2 years.
Yeah.
Club's happy with how he's tracking.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the build and size of some of our players, they're going to take time. Now, Lockie was a later pick, obviously, probably due to that. A little bit skinnier and those sort of things as well, and he's going to be a bit of a late developer. But when you come in and you kick 4 goals in a showdown, that's night game. That's pretty hard to do. So we're really happy with his development once again. Each year he's improved, which was a really good sign when you're identifying talent and who's going to be with you on the journey. That's one thing you have to look at. He hasn't stalled in his development. He's progressing all the time, and like I said, if you get another 2 or 3 pre-seasons in Lockie and put another 4 or 5 kilos on the bones. And what we do love about him is his attack on the footy. He does attack the footy hard, and he's a handful for defenders. When that ball's coming in, you've certainly got to keep an eye on him, and you've got to make sure you're with him, or he can hurt you aerially in the air. And he's really improved his ground level, I reckon, as well over the last, well, since round 1 this year as well. So there's a lot of positive signs. Really, I guess a member of our playing group that the players enjoy to play alongside too. So it's really pleasing for him with all the work that he's done, but he's just scratching the surface of where he can get to.
Is it, in a way, is it easier for a later pick to focus solely on their development because they don't have that weight of expectation that maybe someone like a Fisher has, where he would know internally that there's an expectation that he's going to hit the ground running? Yeah,
well, not all the time. It depends. Yeah, we're going into real depth now with players individually. You're looking at the physical aspect, the mental aspect. Like I said before, like someone like an Isaac Smith's first game was at 22. Well, everyone develops at different stages. You can have a young fellow who's got plenty of talent at under 18, but you know he's going to take a little bit of time. Like you hear the recruiters in the draft that will say, yeah, he'll be ready to go next year straight away. And there'll be others that teams will take in the first round. Yeah, look, he'll take a little bit of time. You've got to be careful with him. I mean, Luke Bruce was playing Box Hill reserves, so he was 3 levels down from AFL footy for a year or so when he first came down from country New South Wales. So they're all a little bit different, but generally when you take the later picks, it's either 2 things. They're obviously players that have just been missed. They're the Brett Kirks or Matty Prittesses, you know, those blokes that have just keep accumulating all the time but haven't had the opportunity, or you may well get the younger player who might take a little bit of time to develop.